So welcome back. In this segment, we're going to talk about how all of these brain changes have affected creativity for Michael with his music, also their relationship together. So for Michael and Jill, what happens when the brain changes? How do relationships become affected?
You know, well, one of the obvious ways I think is I have more forethought now as part of my sort of daily function. You know, I'm not as impulsive as I was probably when we met. So because of that, I'm probably more balanced to be around. You know,
Yeah.
and I think that's probably contributes to just a healthy relationship, whoever you're with. So I just have that extra 5 to 10 seconds where I'll pause before I do something.
Wow.
And, you know,
That's what he
I thought maybe it would make me less fun,
No.
but it's not. It's actually, I think it's made us more healthy.
Yeah, he is so thoughtful. Here's a super great example. We just got back from Cabo. Loved the vacation, but the waves out there were ridiculous and actually terribly dangerous. We actually had an opportunity to experience how dangerous they were unexpectedly. Just walking on the beach, it just swooped us up and put us out. But we were okay. But it was quite an experience. I mean, he goes down, he takes me with him. He's holding my hand because he's not going to let go. We get swept out. We get swept back in.
Yeah,
we must have looked like tumbleweeds. It was crazy. Then I try and stand up, and he couldn't get up, and he pulled me back down. And finally, a guy on shore came around and scooped me up. So about 4 or 5 days later, you know, we laughed about the experience, sands everywhere, blah, blah. But about 5 days later, we're walking along the beach. The tide was out, so we were fine, and we were way up against the wall. And Michael said to me, on a scale from 1 to 10, what is your anxiety
But actually,
level?
before that, I said, hey, I think I want to go out in those waves because they were massive waves,
They
like
were.
10 and 15-foot waves. And it looked so fun. I thought, man, that looks so fun. And then she's like squeezing my hand, like, you know. And then I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, like, how resistant are you to me going out in the waves? And she said, 11. Let's say prior to my brain scan and prior to getting to this place in my life, I probably wouldn't have asked. I would have let her hand go, and I would have said, I'm going out in the water.
Right.
Right?
That's
But,
the difference.
you know, I was able to pause and say, hey, how does that feel to you? And she said, doesn't feel good. And I thought, you know, we didn't come here to be stressed. Let's just keep walking down the beach.
So it makes you a better husband.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I often, when I lecture, I go, how many of you are married? And, you know, half the audience will raise their hand. And I'll go, is it helpful for you to say everything you think in your marriage? And they laugh because, of course, it's not helpful. But just getting those couple of extra seconds to go, will this help me? Because knowing you, I know you guys have the same goal in your marriage that we have, which is to have a kind, caring, loving, supportive, passionate relationship. Always my goal, but I don't always feel like that. And so...
You don't?
Do I...
What?
Do I say things that help me or hurt me? And if you're married to someone whose brain works too hard...
Like mine.
Once you say a hurtful thing, they don't think about it once. You only said it once. They think about it like 7,000 times, and you could be in trouble for like decades.
We're never going to let it go.
This is so helpful. Let's go to work. And I know Michael has a new album out. It's actually one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast. Do you think, because you sort of brought it up, if my brain is better, am I going to be as fun? Which could also mean, am I going to be as creative? Because a lot of my artists that I've seen, they worry. It's like, oh, if I treat their ADD or I treat their traumatic brain injury, will I be as good of an artist? So what do you think with your new album that is more brain healthy?
Well, I think you know, first of all, you hit it right on the head. You as a creative person, especially, I really made my living as a songwriter, who then also was an artist. But the songwriting thing of it, you think about this. As a songwriter, your job is to sit in a room, to come into a room, to sit there and look at a blank piece of paper and just create. So everything in my professional career for 25 years was all about being impulsive. So it's not only that I was my brain was wired to be pretty impulsive, my choice for my career, and then the feedback that you got continually approved that behavior. Man, if you were super impulsive, you could be so creative. I was being affirmed all the time for being super impulsive. I mean, that's my career, right? So then I meet Jill, and it's like she's like the queen of forethought, and so this has created a bit of a challenge for us. So as we described in the ways we described a few moments ago, that has gotten better as I have that extra 15 seconds. But I look back now on many times when I was in a songwriting session, and I would get to the point where I couldn't think straight. And I would literally have to say to the guys, it was sort of a joke. Like there's a couple guys I wrote with all the time, and it would sort of got to be a joke. It'd be like, okay, we need a line. Okay, Michael, leave the room so you can go find the line. I would literally have to leave the room because if there was any talking or any other people making noise, I couldn't think. I would have to literally leave the room, and 15 minutes later, I'd come back and I'd go, I got the line. Whether I did or didn't isn't the point, but the point was that I couldn't think straight.
Yeah.
Right in the moments that I needed most to. And I can say unequivocally that has changed for me. I feel more focused. I feel, instead of, sort of being at a traffic light where you have your foot on the gas pedal all the way to the floor and your foot on the brake at the same time, like you're just revving, even when you're supposed to be stopped.
He's shaking now.
I don't feel that way anymore. And songwriting has become better.
So I want to push back for 1 second on what I heard an automatic negative thought, because for the people listening, because this idea that if I get rid of my ADD, I won't be as creative. And here's why I want to push back on it. We have a budding songwriter at home. She's 14, almost 15. And as much as she wants to be a musician and she's working on it, she likes to sing. Her true gift is songwriting. Even her coaches are always like, no, your true gift is writing. It just comes naturally to her. She's the opposite of ADD. She's almost OCD. She's like, worry, anxious. She's the incredibly opposite of ADD. And her fear in us balancing her brain so she's not so OCD is that she's afraid she will lose her gift. So it's an ant. Do you see what I'm saying? She was like so worried about taking anything to balance that, because every time I would say something like, you'll be less anxious and you'll be more settled, the reason I'm successful is because I'm so anxious. Like I just, do you see what I'm saying? It's a little bit of an ant. And once we finally settled her brain, she actually was able to get into a groove better. So I want people to hear that who are listening.
Because, as a creative person, you're trying to essentially, your creations have an intended outcome, and that is to deliver an emotional experience for others.
Right.
Okay, so for me, I have often wondered, wow, if I get so happy, what am I going to have to pull from that's going to be,
that makes sense.
Besides happiness. So that's a natural thing to worry about that. And what I've discovered is I have those memories of, emotional experiences in my life are so deeply rooted that I don't have to relive them to write about them.
Well, and there's a thing called empathy. Like, you can empathize with other people and what they've gone through. I mean, I wasn't in 9/11, but I still can't watch it without crying and getting goosebumps. That's empathy. You know what I mean? You can still pull from what other people experience.
Although I have a question, and maybe this is naive, so Michael, you're going to have to help me. With country music, we often think of country music as going to people's pain in life, losing your wife, your dog, your car.
Yeah, if you play it backwards,
house.
You get back your truck, your dog, and your wife. But yours is actually pretty positive a lot of times.
But if you think of From Here to Eternity,
right,
or Drink, Swear, and Lie, it's so positive.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful that great music doesn't have to always tap into pain.
Yeah. But part of what makes art work is tension.
Yeah, it does. Conflict.
There's tension and there's release. So, country music, by and large, tells stories.
Yeah.
So you have story arcs. So there's a song of mine called "You Know You're in Trouble When the Bartender Cries," and it's just sort of
That's good.
About a guy who.
It's actually funny.
But it's funny at the same time. So there's this release in all of this creativity, and I think for any artists or any creatives who are out there watching, and you're wondering if you don't feel it, if you don't feel the pain so deeply anymore, will you still be able to tap that creatively? And I just want to say, for me, the answer has been yes, and I think it's worth taking the chance, because here's the truth. If you find that it's not working for you, your creative life has gone to the shambles, you can always start drinking, smoking, and taking bad care of yourself.
You can go backwards. That's what I tell people. I'm like, if it doesn't work, we can still be friends. You can go back to doing what you're doing. And one of the things I want to point out, I don't know if this is true for you, but once we balanced Chloe's brain, who's the opposite, who was afraid of losing her gift, she was really anxious and OCD, she started sleeping better. And when she started sleeping better, she actually became more creative. And she was like, oh, I never thought of that. I'm like, even though we tried to tell you for 2 years, but you see what I'm saying? She started sleeping better, and the sleep actually gave her more of a gift.
Can you talk about your new album? I would love for people who are listening to know about it, download it, get it. Talk about, and what album number is this for you?
This is my 18th album.
Wow.
And in my career, and the album commemorates the 20th anniversary of my biggest selling record on Warner Brothers in 1997.
Super cool.
We had 3 #1 hits, 5 top 20 singles, sold 1 million albums. It was a real phenomenal time in my life. So the new album we thought was fun to commemorate 20 years later, the anniversary of that. So there's 4 new recordings of my biggest hits. So Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie, From Here to Eternity, Too Good to Be True, and You Know Trouble When the Bartender Cries. But then there's also 7 other iconic country classics, because people love great songs, and sometimes when it's been 20 years, people may not remember me, but they love classic country music. So we decided to put out my favorite country songs on there. So great songs like Wichita Lineman, Friends in Low Places, songs that don't normally get covered by other artists. I performed those songs 400 times in a show in Branson over the last couple of years. So I was very comfortable with them, and we felt as though, this would be a wonderful album. So the album looks like this.
Oh, awesome.
And the album's called Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie. And you can get it on iTunes. You can download it on Amazon. You can buy physical copies at 37records.com.
Oh, that's fun.
The number 7. You can stream it on Spotify. You can stream it on Pandora. I mean, you basically can access this album just about anyway. So fun news about the album. We've had 3 singles off the album in Europe. There's really a robust country music community in Europe. And they have a real music chart over there. It's called the Hot Disc Chart. And the first single went to number 2 for 2 weeks. The second single went to number 1 for 6 weeks on their top 40. And the current single, which is Wichita Lineman, which just came out this last week, debuted. It's the highest debuting single of my career. Debuted at number 3 in the top 40 its first week on the chart. So we're having some real success over there. And many people have said it's my best album that I've ever made. They just love it.
So one of the things I like about country music, and certainly your songs, I like country music, and I really loved, I loved those songs from the 90s, still love them. It's timeless. It really is it's one thing I like talk about with my daughter, some of her music today. It's not that I don't mind some of her music today. What I don't like about some of it is it's just freaking boring, and they're one-hit wonder songs that are gonna disappear. But what I like about country music is it's timeless. So I really love those songs that you still play today, and they're amazing.
So we should talk about what music does to the brain. And learning how to play music actually activates a number of really important circuits in the brain, particularly the cerebellum, which is the processor part of the brain, along with your temporal lobe, so it can actually help with creativity and learning. We did a study on teenagers looking at the impact of music on memory. And so we had them play a memory game while they listened to classical music, rock, heavy metal, and country. and they all did better when they listened to classical music. I mean, there's like
Okay,
no
there's
question
no
about
way
that.
I would do better on classical
The
music.
heavy metal, they all like became disorganized. One of the kids took the cards we were using, just threw them up in the air.
I'm convinced if I listened to Def Leppard, I would do better.
But country music was actually the second best that kids performed on.
Yeah,
and
I could see that.
It was actually really interesting.
Yeah.
So music matters. It can increase your joy. Now, music also is heavily connected with memory.
Right.
So if you got divorced from someone and your favorite song starts playing, even 10 years later, you might start breaking out crying because music touches the emotional part of your brain. So as it's the emotional part of the songwriter, it's also, and I love what you said, Michael, I wrote that down, that creativity is to deliver an emotional experience for others.
I agree with that.
I just thought
it's
that
funny.
was
I was
brilliant.
telling that to Chloe the other day. We were listening to an Alan Jackson song on the 4th of July, and it made me cry because it reminded me of 9/11. And I'm like, that is the beauty. That's why musicians get paid what they get paid, because none of us could put into words what we were thinking and feeling. None of us knew what we just had all this emotion swirling, and like it was so hard to process. But a great musician puts into words what you're thinking and feeling. A great musician can tap into those feelings, those thoughts, because you're not even sure sometimes. But when someone else taps into that, it can make you cry. It can make you laugh. It can make you feel joy. And that's an amazing gift. It's an amazing gift.
Thank you for sharing that. It's important information, Daniel. And one thing that I've really appreciated about you and Tana is that you don't just talk about these things, you actually do something about it. And you created an album that has been a top seller on iTunes. Will you talk about that for a moment?
So, as I've been researching this over the last, 20 some years, I realized music changes your brain, and it can change your brain in a really negative way if you're listening to hateful music, or it can actually change your brain in a really positive way. And so when we did Brain Fit, our show, we created a Brain Warriors Way album, and I think it spent 2 weeks on Billboard's New Age chart. But when I did Memory Rescue, we created music for bright minds with pieces for creativity and focus and relaxation and sleep. I just checked, 27 weeks on Billboard's top 10. It's just been crazy.
Because it works too. It's not just because people like the music. It's actually impacting people.
Right.
Drink, Swear, and Lie. You want to pick it up now. Thank you so much, Michael and Jill. We're just so grateful to have you on the program with us. Stay with us, and we're going to talk about Michael's work along how he integrated our work for high school students. Stay with us. Use the code podcast10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com or on our supplements at brainmdhealth.com. Thank you for listening to the Brain Warriors Way podcast. Go to iTunes and leave a review, and you'll automatically be entered into a drawing to get a free signed copy of the Brain Warriors Way and the Brain Warriors Way cookbook we give away every month.